let's talk about the Philadelphia Eagles. We actually have a fan question this week for our perspective for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is, who is the Eagles' breakout player besides Myles Sanders? And this one I gave some serious thought to, guys. I got some options, right? I have two guys that I kind of like this year that I think could be productive. So Jalen Reagor, new rookie wide receiver. We saw a lot of injuries last year. He could fill that role, be the potential wide receiver one, and he has a chip on his shoulder. I think he can come in and tear up the league. With his speed, his agility, and his catching percentages, I think we can see something great. And then Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert was a top 10 tight end last year with Zach Ertz. So I think as they progress as an offense and Carson Wentz develops that relationship with Dallas Goedert, he's only going to progress more and more. And not to mention, Zach Ertz ain't getting any younger. He's got a Super Bowl ring. So, I mean, I know Zach Ertz isn't going to leave the team anytime soon, but I think Dallas Goedert is making his way up in that tight end and in that talk of a worthy draft pick. I would personally take Dallas Goedert in those. Both Jalen Reagor, Dallas Goedert are dirt cheap in fantasy drafts with major upside. So why not take them in the late rounds and see what you could do with them? And like I said, Dallas Goedert got the top 10 tight end. He finished 10th, and maybe he can help you win that league, giving you points week in, week out. So thank you for your questions. We'll be doing polls, questions on Instagram. But Norris, who would you say a breakout player on the Eagles besides Myles Sanders?
Yeah, it's a good question. I honestly, my initial answer and my initial thought was Jalen Hurts, because I'm caught up in the hype of Jalen Hurts and watching him play last year. So the potential to be able to see a Jalen Hurts and Jalen Reagor combo, it would just be cool to see, because we got Joe Squared out in Cincinnati and all these different things happening. So not to take anything away from Carson Wentz, but like you mentioned, the plague of Philadelphia has been injuries in the quarterback position, in the running back position, in the wide receiver position. And Deshaun Jackson is still out there. So I think that he is more than capable especially with Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts being the options at quarterback. I think that they're more than capable of him able to have 1,000-yard performance in 2020. Even though you said, Jalen Reagor, but you should have Alshon Jeffrey and whatnot, and Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Like, it's encouraging to see, two tight ends in the same team be in the top 10 of their, position. That's encouraging, because that shows that there isn't necessarily the one person that's going to take up all of the targets and whatnot. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think, to give you a solid answer, if you did not get that, people, is Jalen Hurts and Jalen Reagor, only because I'm caught up in the hype and I would just love to see it happen. And it's kind of realistic, if Carson Wentz ends up getting hurt, we know who's coming in, and I think he's going to ball out if he touches that field. So,
yeah. I didn't even the Jalen Square. Okay, so you got to imagine, right? In an alternate universe, Carson Wentz and Chris Carson are on the same team. Jalen Hurts and Jalen Reagor are already on the same team.
Right.
And then you got, like you said, Joe Mixon, Joe Burrow. What are some other – we got to look at that. We got to look at –
yeah, we can do a whole other segment on squared players.
Players with the same name. Oh, that's a whole other segment.
Alternate universe teams.
Right. Oh, that'd be beautiful. Let us know if you want something like that. We're definitely gonna do something like that. Anyways, let's crack into the Philadelphia Eagles as a team. We mentioned their quarterback, Carson Wentz. He's got the starting job, and with Jalen Hurts coming in, I think a lot of people are surprised by it, but not really. his injury proneness over the last couple of years have cost the Eagles some games, and seeing how most of their whole team was injured last year, it's only fair to try and protect one of their biggest assets in Carson Wentz, as well as the quarterback position with Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts, phenomenal talent, and we could definitely see him come in. But just to lay out Carson Wentz, the guy cracked the top 10. He was the top 10 quarterback last year, just barely in the top 10. So keep that in mind. He can definitely do it again. He has the talent at wide receiver around him. They just have to stay healthy. With that, looking at his stats real quick, Carson Wentz last year had 607 attempts with 388 completions, over 4,000 yards, 27 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. Just remember, Dwayne Haskins had 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions in 9 games. So that's how accurate he was. With 62 attempts on the ground, he had 243 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. So not as mobile as other quarterbacks may be, but still mobile. Still get you those couple of points. I mean, you're looking at about maybe 8 points a game. Just 8, looking at about 80 rushing yards a game, which is 8 points a game for a rushing quarterback, which is great. I'm sorry, about 4 points per game. Which is about 5 points per game. So that's pretty good. You like to see that from a rushing quarterback, 5 points a game just off of their legs alone. Not to mention the touchdowns. Like I said, the increasing depth at wide receiver is always helpful. So he finished 10th this year. I have him projected to finish about 10th this year. Finished 10th last year. I have him projected to finish about 10th this year. So hopefully he can stay on that projection. And with that, let's move on to their running back, Myles Sanders. Myles Sanders, I think, has a great chance of a breakout year again. He was phenomenal last year, filled in a role at the running back position, and split some time with Jordan Howard. But when we saw Jordan Howard go down, we saw Myles Sanders come up, at least in fantasy value, and he took off. He ran in tons of touchdowns off of receptions. He finished 15th in PPR. He only had 179 attempts, but 818 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns, which isn't really good. But like I said, he was behind Jordan Howard for most of the year, so he could definitely pull that number up. With 63 targets, had 50 receptions, 509 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns. Myles Sanders this year, he doesn't have much competition besides Boston Scott. But we know Doug Peterson likes to involve multiple running backs. So I don't see I can see Myles Sanders getting an increase in touches as well as an increase in probably targets and receptions, but not a significant bump. But like I said, he finished 15th last year, so a bump nonetheless would probably put him near the top 10. I'm projected to finish about 12th to 13th. So definitely a guy you can pick up pretty well in the value in drafts. And put him on your team, probably as a running back 1 in some cases. If you do make that choice to go wide receiver in the first round, I highly suggest against it. But Myles Sanders is definitely worth picking up, in my opinion. He's phenomenal talent. He's got the speed. He's at 5'11", 211 pounds. He's only 23, so in dynasty leagues, he's a perfect guy to target, especially with his role in the Eagles. Now, Philadelphia has his sight set on being the MVP. He has his sight set in being the MVP in 2020, and he has that confidence going in. So in his rookie year, he rushed for over 1,000 yards scrimmage, 1,000 scrimmage yards. So I can see him doing that again. And that's what you want from your running back, especially in PPR leagues. So definitely go target Myles Sanders if you can. He was a second-round pick, so the Philadelphia Eagles aren't really even paying him that much. So definitely a guy that I would be targeting. Now, on to their wide receiver position. We have some rookies and we have some vets with Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. Man, that's another alternate universe right there. Deshaun. Anyways, Deshaun Jackson getting the ball. He's that speedster. Then you have Alshon Jeffrey as another vet. but injuries have plagued this wide receiving core back and back to back to back. Alshon Jeffrey should start and should play this year, but coaches with everything that's going on in the world now aren't sure on his health, and hopefully he can play this year. It'd be great to see him in that wide receiver 1 position like he has before, and Carson's definitely going to get him the ball if he's healthy. So I mean, he's definitely a talent. I'm probably not going to be targeting him just because the possibility of him being on the PUP list. So I would say probably not a guy worth targeting in drafts this year. I would more likely target Jalen Reagor with, like I said, fresh legs, rookie, great speed, and Carson loves those speedsters like Deshaun Jackson. They also got Marquise Goodwin, so I could see him filling in a role. He's more of a super deep dive. Deshaun Jackson has recovered from his core injury, and he pronounced himself 100% as of 3 months ago. So as of March, he was healthy, and now that say he'd have this time to get even more healthy, get more in shape, work out, get his speed and his legs back underneath him. Last year, Carson, in the limited time that he did play with Carson Wentz, which was only 3 games, more like 2 games total, he did have 10 targets, 9 receptions. So you could count on Deshaun Jackson to catch those balls that are coming his way, especially from Carson Wentz. He also had 2 touchdowns in those 3 games, so definitely a guy to be on the lookout for. I'd probably put him on your watch list. And now let's talk about Jalen Reagor. You can check out our Instagram post, hashtag Future Friday, talking about those rookies coming in. Jalen Reagor is, I think, a phenomenal talent. He has speed, he has agility, and he has the strength to boot with both of them. And I think he could remain healthy through this year. There's not a lot of tape and not a lot of highlights of Jalen Reagor that I've seen. But of what I have seen, he's going to be a beast. He has a chip on his shoulder. He's being knocked down by these Philly fans that wanted this guy or that guy, but he's a monster. He's going to tear it up. And, go make sure you check out our Instagram post to see some more details about Jalen Reagor. But, yeah, I would say Jalen Reagor is a good guy to pick up in about the 15th, 16th round if you can. And deep dives, he's probably a really good wide receiver to grab. And dynasty leagues, he's perfect. I think he can fill that role this year and next year. He's listed as a wide receiver 3 on the team, so I think he can produce as a wide receiver 2 on your fantasy league. So definitely got to steal in the late years and see what he can do. He has a really good upside to me. Now let's talk about their tight ends. This is probably the number 1 targeted position on their team when their receiving core was Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. Carson Wentz loves the tight end position, and we even seen when Nick Foles was there how many targets Zach Ertz continued to have. He almost, I won't say he demands it, but his playability demands it. He finished 4th PPR. I mean, we all know Zach Ertz is a top-tier tight end. He had 135 targets for 88 receptions and 916 yards, receiving yards. He played 15 out of the 16 games, and he had 6 touchdowns. So Zach Ertz wasn't somebody that you were super disappointed in at the end of the year, but throughout the year, there's definitely games where you're like, man, this is not the Zach Ertz that I drafted. I mean, having games with 7 points, 5 points, 4 points, 5 points, 6 points, it's not really something that you want to see in PPR leagues, especially because he's getting 8, 9, 10 targets easily. So Zach Ertz has those games where he'll be consistent and he's going to disappoint you on some of these games, but more than most, he'll be on about 85% of the snap percentage, which is exactly what you want from a tight end. That's about his average for the year, is about 85% of snaps. There's some games that he played every single snap. So it's so worth it if you can get Zach Ertz. I don't really target tight ends in early parts of the draft. I usually wait because of the value there. But I would definitely, if you can get them, I would target him. Now let's talk about the one guy that is probably flying under a lot of radars with Dallas Goedert. Like I said earlier in the video, Dallas Goedert has a chance, I think, to break out this year. This is only his 3rd year in the league. He came in 2018. He finished 10th last year, and he had 87 targets last year with 58 receptions, 607 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, it's definitely worth looking into getting Dallas Goedert because he's probably just as cheap, if not even more. You probably pick him up on your free agency. Not anybody's really targeting Dallas Goedert in redraft leagues at all. Dynasty leagues, I hope you already have him because if not, he's he has to be on a team by now. So yeah, that's the Philadelphia Eagles for you. Any other key players I could think of? I mean, that's their whole team is probably worth looking at. But out of who to draft, I would draft Myles Sanders easily. Carson Wentz, another guy I would draft. Zach Ertz again. So these are guys that you want on your team because Philly has a chance of doing really well this year, and their secondary is if not the same, a little bit worse than it was last year. But we'll have to see in the preseason how they do. But I'll put my money on that they're going to throw about the same amount of times and be behind in some games, especially with the improvements that Dallas and the Redskins have made to their defensive line, and the Giants have made to their offense. So I think overall, looking at Philly as a good fantasy value team is a good, accurate description. So with that is the Philadelphia Eagles breakdown.